you may understand how options work, right? But how do they fit in the context of a portfolio? Is it even appropriate for me?
Right.
The other side of the coin is what really creates the most optimal long-term scenarios, right? Okay, you can know as much as you want about options or alternative investments or Bitcoin or all these things. Are you in the asset class for a long period of time that, at least historically speaking, because nobody knows what the future holds, is going to produce the most optimal outcome for you?
We're leading up to the 4th of July, and we're
Yeah.
both in long sleeve shirts.
I know. I don't know. You go back and forth between a couple of days ago, it was 100 degrees out.
Yeah.
100 degrees. Danielle and the kids are down in Aruba. It's 86 down there. You know, the wind's blowing, everything's good. You walk outside here the last few days, and it's ridiculous. And then yesterday, 30 degrees cooler out. It was like 68 degrees yesterday, which is a big difference.
I just want to know
God
why
bless
Danielle's in Aruba, and you're sitting here recording a video with me.
Miss. You know, kidding me? No? What's more valuable? Come on. No. Going down there in a few days, though.
Yeah. So I'm sitting at a baseball game yesterday in a long sleeve shirt, jeans, and the day before I'm literally in shorts and sweating my butt off. So,
but 70 degrees, playing baseball at 70 degrees is fantastic.
As good as it gets.
Yeah.
As good as it gets.
Yeah.
So, so as we look at the 4th of July,
okay,
freedom comes to mind, and then tying that to financials and looking at the financial flexibility, financial independence. What jumps out at you? What do you think about when you think of financial freedom?
Well, another related word. I mean, it's Independence Day, right? That's July 4th. So I do think about that word independence. What is that? You know, freedom, independence. What does money allow you to do in the future? And I'm at my best when I feel free, when I feel the ability to do what I feel like I need to do and have the freedom to do that rather than to be stuck in a particular scenario for a long period of time. So the work that we do, it really comes down to helping our clients create the freedom and independence as they define it, right? And money's a big part of that. Money, especially as you get older, gives you the ability to do the things that you want to do that are most important to you. So that's the big thing for me.
It's the planning around it, right? I mean, it's understanding what you have, what your goals are, and what you can do about it today. So whatever that future looks like, right?
You gotta be careful tapping the table, by the way, because
I
was doing that like last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the video I heard like me
Tap,
tap. But no, I get it. It's that's really the gist of the work that we do is that, you know, we're not flashing forward. We're saying, okay, what are the pieces that we have to put together today, and then all of us execute on together with our clients in order to create that independence. And the plan, right, is the process of defining what that is that's most important to you.
And is it achievable? And when
That's
is it achievable?
A big part, right?
And part of our job isn't always rosy, where you come in and it's not always achievable, some of the goals.
Yeah.
But to gain that financial independence, that's what we're focused on.
Yeah.
And helping clients understand how to save, where to save, the best places to save, the power of compounding and years of investing. That's really how you can work towards that financial independence.
Yeah, I think so. You know what, too, is a big part of it, too, and I know you face this, too, is that defining the goals is often a difficult part, right? Because what's a goal? I want to retire at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we all do, right?
Right.
To a certain extent. You know, I think a lot of us view retirement as, yes, a transition into something else, that independence, but also part of the independence is, hey, I enjoy my work so much, I might want to do it in a different capacity. But a lot of the people that we work with, right, are not necessarily ones where, hey, I want to fully retire and not do a damn thing and, you know, sail off into the sunset, which is perfectly fine, by the way. But I just find a lot of the folks that we talk to are like, I don't necessarily ever see myself completely disconnecting from the work that I love to do. It's just different, at that point.
I think that's the best part of what we do every single day is every client is different, right? Every goal is different. Everything that they want out of their life is different. I think the only common thing is everybody wants to retire at some level at some point. And what I enjoy doing, and probably similar to you, is, okay, outside of retirement, what else is really important to you? What else do you want to be doing? And sometimes it's a second home or travel or vacations, and planning for that so that they have the freedom at a certain age or a certain stage of their life to do those things. That's the beauty of what we do is we make those goals achievable.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important question too, because it goes back to, casually defining what retirement means, but then you have to take that next step, which is often, I'm not saying it's difficult, right? But it's like sometimes we have to pry a little bit more to really figure out, well, what does retirement mean? Well, just narrowly stop working. Right. I want to stop working at some point, but okay, stop working. Freedom, independence. What does that actually mean for you? And you're right, it's different things for different people. You want to spend every day on the golf course? Fantastic. Articulate what is it that is so important to you about that? Well, it's an ability to socialize and to get outside and walk and be active, but also be around people that I want to be around and socialize with. And that may be somebody's definition of independence, right? And you're right. I think that everybody that we meet with, while that narrow goal is often somewhat the same, I want to retire at some point by a certain age, but the reasons behind that can be quite different, right? Yeah. What do you think about, I think a lot of folks think about our role or just finance in general from a client standpoint as complex, right? So they, folks look at the financial world and planning as filled with complexity. What do you think about that?
I think that, and I believe that it's overwhelming for a lot of people.
Sure.
And they don't know where to go. They don't know where to look. So they're reading as much as they possibly can, hopefully, and trying to educate themselves. But when I think of the markets and investing, part of it, I think, is it's intentional to confuse people, right? And not get them comfortable with any of the decisions that they're making.
What's an example of that?
I mean, we can go to the extreme, right? If someone sees something on the news or they're reading an article about options,
okay, right? Sure.
That's confusing. But yet we get questions on, should I be investing in options?
Sure. Yeah.
Or they see something going on in the news about gold or investing overseas. And we ask them, well, what's the purpose of that? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of information that's being given to our clients or to investors or to everyday people in general that completely confuses them and overwhelms them. And they ask a lot of questions.
It's a good point, because I've always had, or I've come to have a little bit of an issue with the thought that the more educated you are about investments, the better off you are. And on the surface, that to me, that sounds reasonable, right? It's like, if I read a little bit more and understand the financial industry more, I'm more educated, I'm going to do better, because I'll be able to do A, B, or C, and I'll understand it. But the point you make is a good one, is that, that's not necessarily the case, right? Because you may understand how options work, right? But how do they fit in the context of a portfolio? Is it even appropriate for me? Right. And then, the other side of the coin is what really creates the most optimal long-term scenarios, right? You can know as much as you want about options or alternative investments or Bitcoin or all these things. Are you in the asset class for a long period of time that, at least historically speaking, because nobody knows what the future holds, is going to produce the most optimal outcome for you? And then number two, as much as you are educated, are you able to do you have the resilience to actually stay disciplined with your investments over a long period of time to actually achieve that long-term outcome? So anyway, long-winded way of
Right.
saying that education only takes you so far. And I love, hearing like certain people in the industry, right? Like a Warren Buffett that says, successful investing has a lot less to do with intellect, and it has a lot more to do with your resilience, with your ability to be patient and things of that nature. So,
Yeah, I think investing can get emotional, right? You're
100%.
talking about
Yeah.
resilience, and we can go over. We've talked about the history of the ups and downs in the markets, but that has an emotional reaction when you see account values changing. And we talk about resilience and emotion, and a lot of time that's why we're here, right? Is to make sense of the confusion, right? To help you stay on the course that is in your best interest, that's going to drive you towards that financial independence. What's sometimes hard for clients is to sit back and hear that and take that advice. But we know that the advice that we're giving them is focused on what we expect to happen in the future and what we know historically has happened in the future, and take all emotion out of it and focus on what's in their best interest. I think that's the hardest part for an investor, is to stay emotionless when it comes to the markets.
Yeah. I mean, we all want certainty.
Yes.
And that's certainly one thing that the future is void of, is certainty, right? We don't know today what's going to happen tomorrow. So to your point, to a certain extent, we have to look backwards at 100+ years of markets and different types of assets, from equities to bonds to cash to gold to all these different things that you field questions about from time to time, right? We all do. And then give recommendations based upon something that's, we have a lot of data in history about that we feel is going to be the best for their future. On that same note, when you think about like complexities, and you mentioned things like folks sometimes being overwhelmed with all the information that's come at them, can you share a circumstance or a experience with a client that you've had, say recently, that they came with whatever was a particular issue or such, and how did that kind of conversation unfold?
No, that's a really good question, Ben. The first one that comes to mind is around planning. And what we tell our clients all the time is, let's put money away, let's save. And we have one client in particular that has been doing that and has done that really, really well. And he's now transitioning into retirement, and we're looking at what he has saved over a number of years into his 401k and into his IRAs. And it's a couple of $1 million. Which is a good problem to have, right? And now he's phasing into needing to live off of some of this money. And because of his required minimum distributions, he is being forced to take out higher amounts of income
that he actually needs
than he actually needs to live off of.
Right.
So what do we do about it, right? Again, good problem to have, but now he's facing tax liabilities that he doesn't necessarily need to be doing. So what we've been doing for him over the years is slowly converting into Roth. When he first started saving, that wasn't an option in his 401k. Now he has an option to be doing those conversions. We're also looking at making more intentional charitable contributions out of his retirement accounts, which helps as well.
Which is a goal of his.
Which is a goal, and obviously gifting it now. And really trying to alleviate as much of that required minimum distribution burden. For him, it's a burden that he has to be taking out of his retirement account.
Yeah, so he doesn't necessarily want to take as much money as he's forced to, which actually happens to a lot of people, right? It's like we often get the question of well, do I have to take all of this and pay tax on it? Well, yeah, so it's not necessarily solving what is all of our, wants to avoid paying taxes, right? But by being proactive about it, you're saying, all right, well, look, let's start doing Roth conversions. You're going to have to pay tax on this, but a lot of this money you're not going to use for your living expenses for you and your wife, but you can do a really good job setting up the next generation, right? In terms of getting that into a vehicle that is, you pay tax on the money now. And so now that can grow tax deferred for a long period of time for your beneficiaries.
Yeah, I mean this is really what they're doing now, is tax planning for the next generation.
So
right?
important.
They're passing on a tax efficient portfolio that they now their beneficiaries will now inherit.
Yeah.
So really meaningful with what some of their goals are. Another good problem to have is how do I want to pass on my wealth? I mean, our goal for all of our clients is to maximize that distribution or that inheritance that we can pass on for them.
Yeah. A lot of the things, while investments get talked about in our industry so much because they're the sexy thing to talk about, but a lot of what we do has to do with piecing everything together in the right way in the context of a plan, right? Yeah,
that's a portion, right? The investing is an important part of it.
Sure.
But I would say in our regular conversations, a lot more of what we're doing is the planning.
Yeah.
And what can we do to help combat inflation or manage the tax expectations or help you achieve that financial independence? So I'm going to flip it around on you. Let me hear some of your conversations that you're having that you're solving for right now.
Yeah. Not terribly dissimilar, right? And a couple of good examples on the tax side. This first one is that a client selling his business. His wife also has an independent business, no employees, and so the natural question is very similar to your story: is that hey, in this circumstance, selling my business, obviously going to have a lot of taxable gains, capital gains as a result of getting a little bit of this windfall. And what can we do to shield ourselves from the tax burden of this happening? Great thing, getting a big pool of money, but what can we do to shield ourselves from the taxes? And so, looking at the situation, like it's very difficult, right, to shield money from the IRS, right? I mean, the IRS is going to get theirs, certainly. But what can we do from an organization perspective to optimize the situation? So in this particular circumstance, the wife being a sole proprietor and been making contributions to just an IRA over time. So that's a max of $7,000 you can put in every year. There's also a vehicle called a solo 401k that is for sole proprietors, no employees, although your husband or your spouse can be on the solo as well. And the solo 401k has much higher contribution limits than your IRA. And for sole proprietors, it has a certain percentage, 20% of the Schedule C income that the employer side can put in. So what we were able to do and talk about was it's not necessarily shielding the proceeds from the sale of the business from his side from taxes, but because now they're getting a windfall of money, and that on her end, the wife was making money as well, that we weren't putting a lot of money into a retirement vehicle. Now we have the ability, because of that windfall, to put a lot more in. Can't do that in a traditional IRA, but we can then open up a solo 401k and defer a lot more money up to I'm blanking right now on what the maximums are, but combined between contributions from the employee side as well as the company side, you're starting to get into the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 per year that you can defer, which is a material amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Is you're not going to hide from the IRS, right? They're going to see what's going on all the time,
right?
But what most people don't think of is how can I take advantage of the current tax code to save as much money
as
possible.
The planning process. This is the type of conversations that ultimately solve the what you said before, is that clients can get overwhelmed because it's not so much about what investment do I put my money in. It's, hey, how do I organize my financial life to make it most optimal? Now an unreasonable expectation is keeping all my money away from the IRS. That's preferable. It's not realistic, right? So then the next step is, how do we reasonably allocate and organize all of our assets in the way that we operate financially as a family to put ourselves in an optimal position? Is it the perfect? There's no such thing as the perfect position, but how do we for optimal for us? And that's a lot of the discussions that we have.
Yeah, I really like that word, optimal. How do you optimize your tax bracket, and what can you do? That's the goal. That's what we're trying to solve for.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we're talking about planning, it's focused a lot on inflation and how do we combat inflation, and then the next part of that conversation is how do we take advantage of the tax code?
Yeah.
And what can we do to make sure that we're taking distributions out or we're saving in the best places that we can take advantage of?
Yeah. And I had another different experience, simple to us, but certainly falling under the category of, most people don't necessarily know this fact about finance. So another example with husband and wife where they have some rather illiquid investments. And so they had a need, their younger couple had a need for capital recently, and had called asking about taking money out of their IRA. And the rules surrounding taking money out of IRAs is such that, well, it's not a loan. You can take money out of your IRA, but you have to return it within 60 days. Otherwise, the IRS will penalize you if you're under 59 and a half with, well, you got to pay tax on it, and then you pay the IRS penalty on top of that. And so one of the things that they were unaware of was they were aware of being able to take loans from their 401ks, but the comment that they made back says, well, look, the interest is like 7 or 8%. And what they didn't realize was, and it's just kind of a funny thing in our world, in investments, in finance, is that in order for something to be a loan, there has to be an interest rate attached to it.
Right.
But what's one of some of the misinformation out there is that interest that you pay on a 401k loan goes back to yourself.
Right.
So it's interest that's attached, that's part of the payment that you're making back to your own account. And so once we covered that and explained it, I can take a loan from my 401k to satisfy these short-term cash flow needs that we have, because we have a lot of illiquid investments. And I was sort of misinformed as this isn't interest that I pay like I take a loan out of the bank. I'm borrowing this money effectively for myself. Right. And so I'm paying that interest back to my account. And so one of those things where I think it was a little bit of a weight lifted off their shoulders once they realized, I'm not, no, is it optimal to take money out of the 401k in a loan? No, I mean, that's long-term. But for short-term cash flow needs, and they have the ability to pay it back, knowing now that, this interest that I'm paying is going back in my account, I think really lessened the burden on them and said, that's a lot better than having to be under the pressure of getting all that money back in my IRA within 60 days and going through that complexity. So again, falls under that category of, hey, has nothing to do with investments, has everything to do with, hey, what's an optimal way of handling the financial circumstances that I have right now?
I love it. Making sense of confusion or misconceptions of really how things work. And that's what I take so much joy in our job, is being able to help people and make sense of this industry. Yeah. And what seems simple to us or just comes really easy is why we want to pass this knowledge on.
And despite the how much education someone has or doesn't have, of course, these are all good examples I think we've shared here, is that having a trusted person in place that can help you digest, or to use the buzzword, demystify, right? The financial or their financial circumstances, aids them in making optimal decisions with their finances, which contributes heavily to what their long-term outcome is down the road. And that's right. Use that word optimal again, is that it's not about picking the best investment at this time or looking at short-term market trends or anything. It's like positioning your assets and then being in the right asset classes to have the most optimal return for you years down the road. That's, for us, the name of the game.
Achieving financial independence. Yeah. So as we wrap it up, 4th of July, where are you going to be? Where are you watching fireworks from this year?
We're actually going to be in Aruba for a few days, watching the fireworks from down there. So celebrating the USA and ABC Islands. Yeah.
I'll be in Mayflower Beach, Dennis, Mass, on the Cape, and really looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Have fun.